Good morning to everyone. I'm Marcia Mode-Stavros, a practitioner here at Light on the Mountains, and it is wonderful to be in the same room with so many of you and to feel the rest of you near us and in our hearts. And the sound of little feet, boy, does that add, doesn't it? We've got the royalty in the front row and the little children. It's wonderful. I invite you to go to that place where we can be still, which is sometimes hard for all of us, I've noticed. But let us get centered so that we can really embrace the hour we share together. I know there's an incredible life force, Father, Mother, Spirit, God, the isness, the allness, the order behind the cosmos. I know this life force to be all providing, all renewing, and all restoring. I give grateful thanks for knowing that this is the joy and the secret of life. I give thanks for this community, for Reverend John, for R.L. and Max, for our leadership council, for everybody who makes this place so special. I give thanks for all who are here in person and from a distance, and together we say, and so it is. Well, there's always a special feeling about coming together at this spiritual place, and particularly after not coming together for so many years, or it seems like so many years. But today, there's a reason to feel a special buzz in our center, and that's because after service, those of us attending in person have the chance to bid Connie Grabo farewell before she joins her daughter, Marcia, in living in Salmon. Connie has been a member of Light on the Mountains for many, many years. She is remarkable in so many ways, and anyone touched by her grace and smarts and wit, you're funny, Connie, already. You're arguing with my words. Anyone who has been touched by Connie has been lucky indeed. But there's something more. For many years, Connie attended on Sundays with her daughter, Marcia, who's here today, and with her granddaughter, Sophia, who is off leading a fascinating life as a young professional. Sunday after Sunday, Sophia was our only participant in our youth program. Energetic and smart, just like her grandma and her mom, Sophia would come up to this podium near the end of service and report on what she had learned in Sunday school. But usually, what really happened was she taught us what she thought we should learn. And most often, she was so right. Having 3 generations of Grabo women in our midst was very special indeed. It helped shape us. We watched Sophia grow up. We celebrated Marcia's accomplishments, and we turned to Connie as one of our wisest of sages, holding the truth in her quiet, steadfast way. It felt good to be able to ask, "What's Sophia up to?" Or, "Connie, didn't you once work for the State Department?" But it also felt really good during coffee hour to be able to say, "Marcia, do you have a second for me? I need to run something past you." There is a power in belonging to a spiritual community, whether in joy or sorrow or challenge or triumph. When we turn to each other, we are stronger than when we walk alone. We experience the energy of like-minded people, and a collective consciousness emerges, a oneness, blending individual voices together into one large, dazzling creation. Like the Grabo women, all of us who make up this spiritual center are invited to be part of something greater than if we were walking it alone. It's easy to take a spiritual community for granted, but the isolation resulting from the pandemic reminded us loudly of how necessary these connections are and how they serve to strengthen our beliefs, our practices, our journey as spiritual sojourners. The tools we learn here help us maneuver life more easily. The words we hear remind us of our God-given grace, and the teachings of the great masters steer us back on course when we are challenged. But sometimes it's just the little things, the hug, the glance, the words of encouragement, the question of concern about your family, your health, your love, or loss. The strength and reassurance gained by connecting with familiar faces in a safe place built by like-minded people. So to you, Connie and Marcia, and Sophia too, we give great thanks today. 3 of you, spanning many years of our history and experience, have given our center shape. You have been a pillar for us. You have been a mainstay. You have taught us by your example. You are in our hearts and in the very fiber of this place. We have been deeply blessed by your presence. We promise to keep the home fires burning, so no matter where you are always here. You'll feel our love and support and care and thanksgiving. Godspeed. And so it is. And now the affirmation for April, which is in the insert. All right, if you will please join me in reading this. I know myself as Spirit knows me, creative, unique, and unlimited.
People are wondering, what do you do in a crowd? There used to be a time. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone at home. This morning, I was trying to remember when's the last time we came together to celebrate something. And I really had trouble remembering. I mean, in a vague sort of way, summer of 2019, we did things like barbecues and all that and acknowledged each other. And of course, as we all know, we've been living in interesting times and celebrating via Zoom. And I'm hoping the days of being on Zoom with a dress shirt and gym shorts are over. Actually, for my favorite things are the videos when people accidentally walk away from the Zoom and you know. Anyway, let's hope we can just reminisce about those sort of things. And one thing that I've mentioned the last few weeks of how we are just pondering, how do we, in a sense, recreate, revision of what we do as a spiritual community, because we kind of forgot in some ways. Like this morning was, where's the coffee pot? As we're making coffee didn't we have one of those big ones somewhere? And we have multiple, which is kind of amazing. But I think as I was reminiscing and trying to remember and thinking of what we are doing as a spiritual community, at the core is support and celebration. That it doesn't matter how we revamp volunteers or how we make coffee or anything like that, to remember that as we recreate, to know what's at the core. And of course, we're celebrating the Graybos today, and I wish Sophia could have been here. That would have been kind of wonderful. We have a long history, and of course, Connie was always one of our best students in any class that we gave, and it was really kind of sobering to realize she knew a lot more than I did. It's like, here you go, Connie. Here, you take the lecture or whatever it is, and always such a joy to have you in our classes, Connie. So wonderful. So here we are. April is an interesting month or an amazing month when you look at religions and spiritual community. There are 3 significant, celebrations, commemorations from world religions in the world in April. And they don't always happen exactly at the same time because often these things are done by lunar calendars. But let's just kind of go over them. The 1st of April was the first day of Ramadan. Coming up, starting the 15th, is Passover. And of course, we have Easter, and we are in a period called Lent. For those who weren't raised Catholic or Episcopal like me, you may not know all about that sort of thing. And so in this world that at moments, as I've said for a couple of years, seems to have lost its mind, that a significant number of people are in their spiritual practice are coming to a time that we believe are sacred, and for different reasons. So on one hand, when we look at the different religions that are celebrating and commemorating this time of year, the reasons why they are very different, and I wouldn't, some people will say, oh, the religions are the same. They're really not. They have different focuses. It's like pieces to the jigsaw puzzle. Each piece is unique and wonderful, but they come together and create this larger picture. But when you look at the larger picture of these three events that are happening, it's really amazing, and to know that regardless of what your spiritual practice is or religion, is that you can borrow a little bit from the other ones and add to your own tapestry in some way. So we look at Ramadan, that it is a time of commemorating when Muhammad was given the Quran by an angel, a very big event in their religion. And so if you are Muslim, you spend this whole month reflecting and fasting, and in a sense, celebrating internally about this great moment in history for Muslims. And of course, coming to Passover, which is such an amazingly rich story. I'll probably talk a little bit in detail next week about that, but an amazing story that, tell me if this applies to you. Wouldn't it be great to leave something behind that you just felt so limited by, and to step forward into having that which you sought in your entire life? That's the teaser for Passover. And I think we can all relate to that. And then we have the Easter story, which is at the center of Christianity. And regardless of what you think is a historical event or not, to challenge ourselves to look at, the wonder of this story and stories, period, that we tell at this time. That one of my favorite authors, Christian authors, is Shelby Spong, who was a bishop in the Episcopal Church, and he passed away, I think, this last year. And he has a book on Easter that I love to refer to this year. And of course, there's always this question about Easter or any other religious event that is celebrated. The question is it truly historical? Did it really happen? Sort of thing. That if we can't quantify it in an Excel spreadsheet somehow, that it doesn't have value. Because that's how we are in the 20th and 21st century. But he says, I can't guarantee that a battered up body got up and walked out of a grave, but I can guarantee that something miraculous happened. So to look at any of these stories of any world religions, and rather than say, well, that doesn't make sense, how could that happen? But realize that there is also still a sense of the miraculous and larger than lifeness within those stories. And it doesn't really matter, to me at least, of the historical event of it. So much of the world now is contemplating the presence of the divine or God. They're contemplating a sense of miracles, which we kind of have discounted in our left brain sort of mind, and are steeped in this idea of wonder of amazing things can happen. Really, amazing things can happen. Just when you think things are at their worst, or unhealable, or unsolvable, amazing things can happen. And that's what I think even the idea of Ramadan or Lent, this time of going within and contemplating, is for. To take your attention off the facts, which are important, and look at possibility in some way. Look at, yes, I know this seems like there's no solution, but something amazing could happen if I'm open to it. One thing that I found really interesting and loved as a child growing up Catholic, and I don't know if they still do this, because I'm no longer a card-carrying member, that during Lent, of course, if you've been in a Catholic church, they have a lot of statues. And when I grew up, during Lent, that they would put tarps on them, pretty ones, and so that you couldn't, because they didn't want you to be distracted by things. And one of the big, reveals of Easter was, all the tarps came off. Everything was back, and there's flowers out, and it's celebration after this time. And I just think it was so important to say, not that you shouldn't look at statues or anything else that's pretty or wonderful. It's just that let's remind ourselves to take some time at different points in our life to just be with ourselves, be with our thoughts, be with our spiritual practice, whatever that may be for you, and ask some of these bigger questions and look at things in the world and our lives and actually say and believe something big could happen here. I don't see evidence of it, but something big could happen here if I'm open to it. So this week in my blog, I wrote about something similar but much different, about alchemy. I love the concept of alchemy because in a sense, that's what we're all looking for when we do affirmations or pray or light a candle. We're looking to change a situation we think is one that we don't want or bad, and we want to change it into something that we really like or is wonderful. So in the whole medieval I was going to say science, but in their term of science, the belief that you could change something like lead into gold. And even though I believe in unlimited possibilities, I kind of think that one isn't one that can fly. I mean, I don't want to be like the downer on this and like, John told me you couldn't change lead into gold today. It just ruined my whole day, But it's so interesting that there was this belief that you could. And it's how they approached it. So if you've ever taken, I'm sure you've all taken science class that we remember a million years ago in possibly grade school and high school, and I can barely remember it, but they had a different version of science. They thought that everything consisted of a different balance of 4 elements, that it was water, earth, air, and fire. And so in their minds, to change lead into gold, that you would change the balance of those 4 things in lead. If you just changed the balance, that material, the lead, would have no choice but to shift into gold. Isn't that interesting? And that each person has their own mix of those 4 elements. And if you are in ill health, the answer in alchemy was not to find the right medication or plant necessarily that would have a healing property, but that you would work on them to change their energetic field in these 4 areas, and then healing could have no choice but to take place. Isn't that interesting? And so I think when I look at alchemy, we're all, in a sense, hoping for that on some level, aren't we? I think we have been led to believe that prayer is a petition for alchemy. Can you change my balance? Something out there, what there? What a God on high in heaven, can you change my balance? Can you do, I love this word though, transmutation, which literally means to change at the molecular level into something else. And in times that were difficult, isn't that what you wanted? That it was a situation that was so troubling and so negative that you just thought, I need to change on the molecular level, or the situation needs to change on the molecular level for relief to take place. And even though I kind of still don't believe that turning lead to gold is possible. And in fact, I do think it's possible metaphorically. That we can do significant shifts and changes for our lives, of ourselves, our families, and the world to change drastically. And I think that's the whole point of prayer and affirmations today in the largest sense of the world. We are seeking alchemy. We are looking at a condition that seems unsolvable and unhealable, but yet there is a part of us that longs for a different experience. And it's very easy to convince ourselves that it's not a possibility. There's so much evidence to the contrary, that we're so stuck that there's no way through. But then we have the month of April. That this isn't just about things that happened centuries or millennia ago. It's about bringing the idea of possibility and wonder into the present. Because it all starts with the idea that I think there is a way through if we allow it to happen. So some of us are reading a book in a little book study called I Am the Word, and this week it talked about wonder. And this idea that wonder is something that we have lost. This idea of possibility. And just read a paragraph here. It says, wonder is a belief in what can be possible. Wonder is an imaging and seeing and a process of expression of the senses when one is benefited from an image, a miracle, a thought that is so wonder-filled that all one can do is express wonder in the face of it. Goes on to say, as one is in wonder, their frequency lifts because their imagination, the parts of them that were restricted, have now relaxed to appeal and to embrace a new paradigm, a new possibility of what reality can hold. So I know there's a part of us that says, you know what I mean? It's like, no, but I saw this on the news last night, and it says this one person is never going to see anything differently, so I just, I don't know about this wonder thing. But it has to start somewhere. And it has to start with us as individuals and groups, that something greater is possible. And so let's bring this to, how do we express this desire? And we usually do it through something that we call prayer, which has so many different methods and way to approach it. And I particularly like the way that we approach prayer. It's not putting in a requisition form for something. Actually, what it is, which this is scarier, because it somehow seems, okay, if I just send off a form to request from gods, angels, guides, fill in whatever you believe in, they can say no, they can do it next week, they could do it now, but it takes me out of the mix somehow. That happening is someone else's responsibility. And you can say, well, my prayer wasn't answered. And maybe the angels will have a special on that category next week, and I'll try again. But in our form of prayer, and through this book, is this idea that prayer is a commitment to say, change needs to happen, and I'm first in line. And that's really a frightening thing to say. Change needs to happen, and I am first in line. And so when you are willing to be the first in line, as you are taking a concept or idea to prayer, there's a lot of responsibility being first in line, isn't there? As opposed to I'll just go way back here and no one will see me. It's like saying, no, I'm on board for this. Are you on board as well? And to be first in line has you, in a sense, to be the banner carrier, to say, well, what is it here that we really want? And that's a really important thing. What is it that we're really looking for right here. Bob's going to blow up any second here. Okay. Okay, where was I? So, here's a good question. What do I really want right now? That's a good question. Because when we are sometimes caught up in I call it our smaller human ego cells, we will answer that question on that level. What do I want? My life is not working in some way. Well, I want someone else to change. I want my work or career experience to somehow be different. I want my next door neighbors to be different. Not you, Cindy. Cindy's my neighbor. We somehow equate it that if there's something more in my bank account, that we think that if those things were to happen, the problem would be solved. But when we come up with solutions at this kind of ego self level, the solutions that we come up with don't really transcend that. There's no transmutation that takes place in that moment. So when we are dedicating ourselves to change ourselves through prayer, my advice is to think big. Isn't that almost kind of scary? What? Think big? I just kind of want to be over here and kind of hide out a little bit, and if you just send me a check or something, everything will be all right. But to step forward and think big. And what does that mean? Global healing. And you think, oh no, I can't be part of that. Actually, you can. So to really think, what are the spiritual qualities I would like to be the front in line to bring into the world with? Knowing that those larger ideas, if you were helping to make it come to pass, it wouldn't matter how they showed up. So what could some of these things be? A sense of greater peace, a sense of greater unconditional love that you are feeling for all humankind, a sense of joyous abundance that just does not include finances in everyone's experience. Knowing that as we are rightfully troubled and are in prayer for the Ukraine, to not necessarily be focusing on certain things that need to happen, but to go again for the bigger ticket items. I know that part of my consciousness can help contribute to absolute healing in that part of the world. And don't get bogged down by the details, but you go, well, wait a second. I don't even know anybody over there. I haven't even sent a check to anyone yet. It starts with knowing, absolutely, in this idea of this month of miracles, that amazing things can happen. And one of the first contributions I should do before I even write a check or am concerned with the details is to know that something that seems impossible is absolutely not only possible but inevitable in that part of the world. And to live that possibility. So when you go to brunch later on and someone says, oh God, they'll be just destroyed for generations to come. To say, I don't think so. And this isn't like a fantasy sort of thing. It's energetically showing up and knowing that absolute transformation and healing is possible in this moment, and that as we hold that truth, the details have a way of starting to fall into line. And then keeping that consciousness, you are personally led to what are the things you're supposed to do. Again, of course, as far as we are away, it might be making donations or something along that line. But it's to always know, even before we go to what we think of as prayer, that the idea of there is nothing beyond healing, there is nothing that is beyond change, that the presence of the divine is at the center of all things, and I'm going to be the standard bearer for that idea. And it's not an easy role. had a conversation this week, which, like I have had many conversations, with someone saying, I just don't see how we're ever going to heal. I don't see how it ending up any other way than more disaster. And we might have some of that along the way. I'm not going to say let's just pretend that all this isn't going on. It's still showing up with knowing that amazing things are possible if we allow them to be possible. And especially this time of year to say, well, I have some examples. Whether you are Muslim or Jewish or Christian, you have some real examples to draw from. And that's the whole point why we bring them into this month to look at again. That part of it is, yes, to recognize what happened in the past, but the other part is to bring the amazing things from the past into the possibilities of the present and the future. And as you are challenging yourself to do that, know that you can draw from all these traditions and to know that there is this larger energy of possibility being celebrated in the world right now of those three main religions. And you can piggyback onto it. You don't have to be Muslim, you don't have to be Jewish, and you don't have to be Christian. You can borrow. You really can. You don't have to be card carriers in any of those religions to take all of them and incorporate the idea of those possibilities into the possibility that we have right now in the present. And as we do that, to realize that there is this larger thing that we can be part of. That in our form of affirmative prayer at Light of the Mountains, one of the first things that we do before even saying, this is what I want, we acknowledge that the divine is in all things. And that the only way that I can, in a sense, create with this power is to recognize that it's there. Ernest Holmes, the founder of the Science of Mind philosophy, says there is a power in the universe that is there for you to use. That you tap into it. That I think sometimes when we get bogged down with this, impossibleness nature, what we think of as prayer, is because we feel our separateness, our ego-ness, that we're just here. Who am I? But our form of prayer reminds you is that you are dialed into something so immense that as humans that we can't even begin to get that concept of it. It's kind of like this. So, this awkward Madonna thing I've got here? So there's a little AA battery in here. And I have to check it every Sunday because before you know it, there's no more juice in the battery. So this is almost like my ego self. There's this fear that I could run out. This fear that it won't work any longer. And this fear that I'll have to, like tragedy, run to the kitchen and get another battery or something like that. But it's actually invisibly connected to a command center back there, is what I call it. That's my technical term, our command center in the kitchen. And there is a little cord out of there that plugs into one of those little things in the wall. And think of that as unlimited energy and possibility. Whereas my ego self gets concerned about, the battery, it's almost out of juice. I don't have enough. We may not have any replacements in the kitchen. But the truth of it is there's an unlimited source right over there. And so my fear should not be so much about the battery, but by my unwillingness to know that there's an unlimited source. And it's there to be used. And it doesn't say, as I go to use it or anyone else, it doesn't talk back. It says, I really don't want to serve you today. Or, I don't like toaster ovens. Or anything else. It doesn't argue with you. It's just there, the good in the universe that is there for you to use to create in your life. And so when we look at the power and presence of prayer, it's at that level of possibility. That it's the humanness in us that sees us as limitations. I can't, in a sense, ask for this big thing. I better ask for this little thing. It's like, I'll just ask for a battery replacement as opposed to unlimited source. And that's how we've been trained to run our lives. I'll just concentrate on this battery that is, finite. instead of that which is infinite. So I think this time of year in April, as we're looking at these different spiritual practices and religions, to me, the message is the possibilities are infinite. Things that you thought could never happen do happen. And you just have to be on board for them. This is an amazing time of history. You could say it's amazing and, gee, what did I do bad to get born in this time of history? Or say, you have a front row seat on something amazing. You have a front row seat to see the world transform into something we have dreamed of for generations. You're here. You can take part. You can plug into this unlimited sense of change and be at front of the line to help make it happen. I think that's the energy that we need today. And I just want to close with something that written by Ernest Holmes many years ago about, I guess, different religions and how we should approach them. He says, let each draw the picture of divinity in their own way and in their own brush, blending their colors from the inner perception of their own spiritual state. We should never rob anyone of their own faith. Respect every person's belief and be willing to worship with anyone at the altar of their faith. Be all-inclusive in your spiritual embrace of humanity. Do this with deep sincerity and in reverence, and with a complete abandonment of the personal self to the spirit which has revealed itself throughout the ages. Love all and criticize none. Refuse to bury spiritual sympathy and divine understanding in the grave clothes of intolerance and bigotry. Thus, shall your all-inclusive understanding pass through the flame of love into union with good. This was written in 1944. So when something's timeless, it's timeless. So let's just take this within as we pray today. And first of all, let's take maybe our definition of prayer and remove it from our brain for a moment. And just know that prayer is possibility. True prayer is ceasing to say, God, please change the world, to I'm first in line to change me. It's the acknowledgement of the miraculous nature of humankind. It's knowing that what seems to be impossible is possible. We celebrate that through the practices of Islam, through Judaism, and through Christianity this month. What was never even considered happened. And we use that as our foundation to go to the next step. So as we exist in this physical world and acknowledge, yes, there are many things that we want to see change. But we look at them and we look within them and know that there is an innate perfection nonetheless. That healing is possible right now. Transformation is not only possible, but inevitable. And that we dedicate ourselves to raising our personal vibration to help see that into reality. We plug into the unlimited source of transformation and change. So for all of us, I express our thanksgiving for this possibility. And we do what is hard to do as humans. We release it and we let it go. We untether ourselves to the outcome and just stand within the perfect solution. And so we just affirm this together as we say, and so it is.